Okay.
Right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Monday, February the 1st Planning Committee of Buckingham Town Council. Let's hope this is going to be a brighter, happier month for most of us. In the absence of our chairman, Councillor Lisa O'Donoghue, I will take the chair tonight. We are preceded by public session, but Nina, I believe we have no one to speak.
That's correct.
Thank you. So if we can go straight onto the agenda, item 1, apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Town Councillors Try and O'Donoghue.
Thank you. I'm sure members will wish them both well as they're recovering from the virus.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Item 2, declarations of interest. Any declarations of personal prejudicial interest on this agenda?
Just the normal ones declared normally, Chairman.
Thank you. As a Shire Councillor. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's noted. Item 3, minutes. You've all had a copy of the Monday, 18th of January minutes. Any corrections, changes, or are you happy for those to be forwarded to the full council? Thank you. Everyone in agreement? Item 4, Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan, Vale of Aylesbury Plan. We've got 2 items on that. Appendix A, which Paul has put together for us, and we've also got an extra document, ED 265, which we'll talk about when Paul gives us his report. Thank you, Paul.
Oh, well, I have to say, it's mostly Catherine's work putting together members' work as well. So this is the draft response. So hopefully there's nothing unfamiliar in there. And it's for members to agree that they're happy with those areas of response.
Yeah, these are the ones that have been put together and Catherine kindly collated for us. So is everyone happy with those? If you've got it on your agenda, Appendix A in red is our changes. These are going not to the inspector, of course, but these are going to Buckinghamshire Council as our responses to the further main modifications.
So Robin has a hand, and so does Carolyn.
Yeah, I'm just going to, yeah, so Robin was first.
Well, thank you for the work done on this. What I am concerned about is, as we all know clearly, the consultation on affordability has been bypassed. It looks like we're stuck with the 25% affordable for the foreseeable future, and hopefully the Buckinghamshire Plan will eradicate that. But there's nothing in there about that. Through the chairman, is there any way we can make some offering to ask him to look at that? Because you attended the meeting and it was postponed on 2 occasions, and I don't think we can say this strongly enough. It was never looked at.
Yes, in fact, we can add something to that. You haven't actually all seen the document yet, but what happened, North Bucks Parish Planning Consortium sent to us a document, ED 265, which is part of the VALP examination. It's the response from the inspector about a number of issues which he's considering. One of the things he is going to consider further is Buckingham sites and Maid Morton and Buckingham transport strategy, which we'll come to in a minute. But regarding affordable housing, he has noted that any VALP policy would require a higher proportion of affordable housing. And he says this would be an outcome which would both contradict NPPF paragraphs and neighbourhood plans. He says that the earlier hearing sessions, the council was at pains to point out that it was not its intention for VALP to undermine the concept and value of neighbourhood planning, and accepted it would be unsound if it did so without good reason. Now, the inspector is trusting them, thinks that he believes that's what they mean, and he says he does not believe the issue needs to be revisited. But I think what we need to do, Robin, as Robin said, is make it quite clear in our response that we have not yet been given an opportunity to put forward
things
on affordable housing.
Through you, Chairman, then, if it was never consulted on and it was never heard, if it was a court of law and one witness was unable to present their case, the whole case would fall because evidence hadn't been heard. So I don't see how they can proceed to a conclusion with that without discussing the well-made points from not only Buckingham Town Council, but many parishes and that to it on affordability. It seems lack of natural justice in many respects. There may be a legal wording round where we can avoid it. And it's not for us to trust the Buckinghamshire Council, because the Buckinghamshire Council inherited the Vale Plan from the District Council. So, and we also have to be minded that there's a larger amount in the only area with a made plan is High Wycombe, and there's a larger affordability number put in there, period. And we're likely to get the development in North Buckinghamshire. So it doesn't seem sustainable. Unless the Buckinghamshire plan, which won't come into place probably till 2024, is going to put this right. But theoretically, there could be a hell of a lot of applications put in before then. Chairman, is there any way we can write a strongly worded letter to the inspector asking him to open this up again, or whether he won't? I see Howard shaking his head, but if you haven't got anywhere to live, Howard, and you need a home, affordability in that is we're all quite privileged because we live in property. We do need to push on with this. I put an amendment to the Vale Plan as the only amendment put on this was to increase the affordability, which is a public record, was voted down by the majority group council on the district council. There was only 2 amendments put to the Vale Plan, both of them by me. One was to remove the site on Osier Way, and one was to put it back into industrial, and one was affordability. That is a factual fact. That's a public record. And I still stand by the fact they should have allowed it amended at the time. We are where we are, but if you haven't got a house, having nowhere to live, and affordability is a big question, not only for young people, but for people trying to work in this area and key workers.
Thank you. Carolyn, you've been waiting?
Yeah, I just putting together a response from the Buckingham Society, and I noticed that on the policies map, there is no mention of the reserved site for the cemetery. Should that be in?
Yeah. Catherine?
Catherine, you're muted. Or Sheena may help.
Yeah, or Sheena.
I'll let Catherine go first.
You're still muted, Catherine.
Is that better? Now you see.
Oh, Catherine's muted again.
Yeah,
You're good now.
Right. It's an approved outline plan, so it's obviously been designated as some cemetery and not developable, because it's. I mean, they're waiting for the detailed plans, but.
But shouldn't it be on the policies map as a reserved site? I mean, I noticed other.
Well, reserved for what it would be my question, Carolyn, because it's if there's an approved application for that site, it's no longer available for reservation for anything, is it?
I think I see what you mean, what you're saying. I just thought that as they've got industrial and employment land on it, they ought to have earmarked that bit as well.
Yes, but I think those are undeveloped. I mean, Osier Way hasn't got approval yet, so it's still a variable possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't vary something that's got planning permission to go ahead.
Right.
No, just there are other things that are.
I don't know if Sheena's got a different opinion on this, but that would be my opinion. The fact that it is an approved application and therefore they're just waiting for the details to go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Sheena, if you could add to that, thank you.
I pretty much support what Catherine is saying. It's also designated in the Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan as that, and the majority of the designated sites in the Neighbourhood Plan have been saved in VALP, with obviously cite M as an exception where it's not been supported, but definitely our sites have been protected as stands in neighbourhood plan. So they may have just thought that they would be repeating themselves, and now obviously it is actually moving forward as a cemetery. So I suspect it is okay not to have that there.
Thank you. Any other comments? Robin, we'll deal with your suggestion when we move on to what we're going to apply to the inspector. Councillor Harvey, John?
Yeah, I was just going to support what Robin said. I think we shouldn't let this go. Affordable housing is the only ambition for a good number of people, and we simply can't accept the VALT recommendation of 25%. No matter what warm and fuzzy words they say about at least 25%, we know how developers think and how they plan the mechanics and the commerciality of their developments. We have to stick at the very least with our 33% that we've got. And Robin's absolutely right. There will be a shift from Wickham up to this part of the world. We've seen that happen with the housing numbers and the allocations because of the pot boundness supposedly of the south of the county. If they bias it again because of the extra chance to build houses that are non-affordable, we'll see a huge influx and pressure on Buckingham and North Buckinghamshire that simply cannot be allowed. There cannot be within one county region a difference of such stark level. You know, your difference of 1% would be enough for developers to eye up our areas with more interest. A difference of 9% or 8%, if I get my arithmetic right, it's just not on. It's just not on. We must make strong protests about this.
Thank you. So as we said, this Appendix A we're looking at, this is what is our reply to Buckinghamshire Council. Anything else on that anyone want to comment on, or shall we forward it as it's been done? Is everyone happy with that? Robin, do you want to speak on that again?
Well, I'm grateful for Councillor Harvey's support on the affordability. I think we need to put some pointed words around that question in our response, because we have very little time to respond to this. Gravity happens as gravity happens, and we will get that flux of travel towards us for development. It may not be comfortable for them, but it was an error. It was a mistake. It was bad form, and we were all told that you could only sustain 25%. It's been proved to be wrong. Wickham proved it to be wrong. So if you can sustain 40% in an area that doesn't get any development, why can't you sustain close to 40% in an area that doesn't get development? Why can't you sustain 35%, which was the approved title in our area? We need to, the inspector can't walk past this, because I claim that if he walked past this, it's like in a court of law, the evidence has not been heard and the case has not been made. And if you're a defence barrister, that would be your defence at the end of the trial, wouldn't it? Yeah. So I think we do need to put in exactly the same response that we put in to the original consultation, which your good self and Councillor Hirons tried valiantly to have heard. That should be our response to them, and ask what are they going to do about this. I don't think we need to write a new response. I think the response that you and Councillor Hirons were going to put, and you spent many days sat there waiting to put it, didn't you? You're never going to get them hours back. But at least let's hope that your hours can be well spent by at least it being accepted that this is an error. And thanks again for Councillor Harvey for supporting this. And I know that other councillors would support this, and it was our position and we should represent it. Well, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. May I suggest then, when we're about to consider the response to the inspector, whatever we say to him, we attach to Appendix A for the attention of Buckinghamshire Council. Is that agreeable?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll approve Appendix A as there, with the addition of whatever we're going to put to the inspector about affordable housing. On affordable housing, I still have all my documents that I was going to present to the inspector back in 2017, but we never had the chance to present them. So we can use those as a working document, particularly because it draws attention to the higher affordable housing levels in the south of the county, High Wycombe, in Oxfordshire, in Northamptonshire, and in Bedfordshire, and of course Milton Keynes. So we draw attention to the much, much higher, 45% in some places. Oxford city centre, 50% affordable housing on any major development. So we do have all that documentation prepared. So it's just really a question of digging it out and using that. Is everyone agreeable to that? And that would be put to the inspector, that obviously prefaced by the fact we were not given a hearing first time round.
Well, thank you, Chairman, for saving all that. That shows complete probity and honesty about these matters, and I'm sure Catherine's got her own notes as well. We cannot walk by this. We have to say something, because children and older generation looking for somewhere to live won't thank us if we don't.
Thank you. Right, the other part of our response to the inspector, which arises from this ED 265, I think Carolyn probably has obviously seen it. A lot of it's about Salden Chase, Shanley Park, and its impact on the villages. But what particularly affects us is, as I said earlier, Buckingham sites and Maids Morton and Buckingham transport strategy. Now, the inspector wrote to Buckinghamshire Council in the middle of December. We received these documents through the North Bucks Parish Planning Consortium only on Saturday. Where they've got to in the meantime, I don't know. Roy van der Pol managed to dig them up. He sent them on to us. And the inspector says, although I find the council's explanations and adjustments to modifications acceptable, the new transport evidence submitted since the earlier hearing sessions means I would benefit from a further hearing session. Furthermore, as a result of the short notice given to the council's previous tergiversations, wonderful word, tergiversations in relation to Maids Morton, a number of people did not attend the previous hearing session who might have been expected to do so, and a further opportunity for them to be heard should therefore be given. Some representations have submitted specific suggestions for further amendments and so have a right to be heard, as do Jeff Armstrong on behalf of Bellway and David Locke of Hallam Land for the Buckingham sites. Tergiversations, in case you haven't met that word, and I hadn't until I read this, is making a statement that's different from making statements that are different from each other, so cannot both be true. I mean, it's a great piece of councilese, that. So what we need to do is decide whether we want to be represented at this further hearing session to put Buckingham's case again. Councillor Stutchbury.
Well, thank you for the explanation of that word. It's not one we used at Buckingham Secondary School on a regular occasion. I think they used some other term for when they were addressing us. But that was not one I received in the classroom. I think that there is some important things around this. There was discussion. The Vale Plan's almost like an historic discussion in itself, the amount of time it's gone on, 2013 to where we are now, I think it is. It's almost like a book of its own, isn't it? A story well told, with many parts played by different individuals, not all of them successful. The part about the transport study, we need to look carefully, because the original transport study for Buckingham and the transport round Buckingham showed the Western Bypass. Now, the Western Bypass, as everyone present will remember, was to come off the new roundabout at Tingit roundabout and go across and to the A422 from the A421. Now, that was proved to be the only way in that study at the time, I think in 2013, 2014, when we were looking at that they could handle traffic. We need to be reassured that's actually in the plan going forward, because not to link them two roads puts all the traffic back up into the town centre. It was the only way to look at it, and it was the only way they premised contributions should be made from developments over the years to the cost of delivering that road. Now, we need to be assured that that's actually in there. If it's been deleted, it's an error. It's definitely not good judgment, because it leaves Buckingham with no forward-thinking infrastructure, and it did complete one half of the bypass that the Borough Council, in their infinite wisdom, put together for us. And it does open up opportunities, and it also delivers traffic movements away from the town centre. So I think we do need to look at that. As I say, somebody will write the book one day called The Vale of Aylesbury Plan, a story well told. But I think we need to bring that to their attention if it isn't in there, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey, you had your hand up.
I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you have your
I
hand.
was more or less in line with what Robin was saying.
Right, okay, fine. Anyone else like to speak on this? Yeah, Carolyn?
Thank you. I was really just going to say that, yes, it's very good news that the site MM0006 is going to be heard again at a new hearing. And I don't know if councillors have heard, but the determination of the planning application has been confirmed will not happen until after the hearing. So that's all part and parcel tied up together. On the transport strategy, I was just looking at some of the documents today, the modelling, and I'm still perplexed as to this wording on dualling the bypass between the Ragcliffe roundabout and the A413. Surely this is, it refers to possible new dual slip roads at each junction, but not dualling the whole thing, please. Can someone enlighten me as to the exact meaning of that?
Catherine, could you like to?
No.
No.
I am as confused as Carolyn. At least they're calling it a bypass instead of a ring road. But no, I assume that dualling means an island up the middle, but they've got verges each side that they can expand into, I suppose. But I don't see the point of it at all.
Thank you. Robin?
Thank you, Chairman. One of the things it doesn't, this looks like a document but somebody's dug up when there was from a different time. I remember seeing something like this back in 2006 and something like that when they were talking about dualling roads. It looks like something's been thrown back up again. What they're forgetting is the garden centre is a thriving business on one side and the golf club is a business on the other side. And that area of land between the two, there isn't anywhere to dual it. If you're going to take away the footpath, residents won't get from Tinjwick to Buckingham along the footpath. They can't cycle. Much better that they look at the area where they can do it, which is the Western Bypass. There's no land. There is land past the golf course and past the garden centre. But anyone who's seen the development gone on in the garden centre in the past 10 to 15 years, where they premise putting that road is their main entrance into the garden centre. It's got sheds on it, the storage area, and it's got a separate entrance, which they must be aware of because they had to put a separate entrance in. Catherine will remember that when they built it, it failed and they had to come back and build it all again because the roadworks were done incorrectly. The contractor didn't do it. So I don't know where they're going to get the space from. You cannot invent space. And the other side of it, we must be interested because if they're going to dual it anywhere, part of that's going to be cemetery. So they're going to put it through the cemetery and back to the Browns roundabout. I don't know. And the other piece of the land going down by the hill, the bridge at the bottom, anyone who knows that bridge is very narrow. It's not a very wide bridge, but takes the stream which comes from Preston Bizzett and flows down that way through Gorka. It's not a very narrow bridge. They'd have to put a new bridge in because the bridge isn't wide enough to take a dual in over it. So I don't know whether they've actually even done a site visit or whether this is not blue sky thinking. I don't know what the term is, pink elephant thinking, I reckon, but because it just can't work. Not with what's taken place since, I think we looked at this probably back in 2006, 2007, when people were doing that and the world's moved on. It's moved on since then. the economics has changed, and there's 2 thriving businesses there.
Thank you, Robin. Any other comments on this, or shall we leave Paul, Catherine, and myself to formulate the response to the inspector? Is everyone happy with that? Thank you, and I'll make sure I get the our affordable housing documents to both Paul and Catherine. Thank you. Move on to item 5 then, action reports. Just looking at the top of action reports, first page, town and parish charter, town clerk to circulate when available, which has been done. There was a report to the full council last week, and a working group has been set up of 4 of us. So we will be working on that to get that completed before the interim council meeting at the end of February. Planning policies, town clerk to ask about revisions to policies and time frame on constitution. Well, things have moved on a bit since then. You'll probably be aware that the Audit and Governance Committee met last Wednesday under Chairman Councillor Richard Newcombe, and on that panel was Councillor Stutchbury. Robin, could you just fill us in about the town and parish call-ins?
Well, I'll lay out the short history of it to start with. Originally, it was raised here at Buckingham Town Council. The planning committee here raised the concerns. I took the concerns to the cabinet and raised an indicative question with the cabinet about that. I then took a motion to council, which was amended, and an acceptance that they would review it. That then went off to the Constitutional Committee. That then went back to the previous council meeting to agree that that was policy, to bring it back to allow a consultation on it. The Constitutional Committee and the Standards Committee, there's vice chair and chair of each committee have been reviewing this. Councillor Mordew's vice chair of the Standards Committee, and they've been reviewing this, and they've come back with a recommendation of which Councillor Newcombe, who's chair of the Audit Committee, which I sit on, said that there is going to be a change. The change will be, and within the changes, but they didn't go into the specifics, we've won the right to be consulted, and we've won the right to call applications in again, in his own words. So I think you've had a major change in policy in a very short, straight amount of time. It will not be identical as what the old policy was under the Vale Plan, but there will be the right for parish councils to call applications to committee, which will save a lot of call-ins, presumably, and make the process work clearly. I understand what's going to happen is once it's gone back to the to one committee, it's coming back to audit. Which order that was, I cannot remember, and then it will go to the council meeting to be agreed. I think perhaps the last council meeting of the planned period of the year. So if that happens, that means that will become policy, and then hopefully within the new year and the new council, whenever that may be, May or October, depending when the elections are, then councillors can call applications in one form or another, and the detail of that will come out. So I think we must say that's a big move in 12 months for any local authority to amend its constitution. And I think there must have been a lot of agreement within a lot of councillors about the necessity to do something. Yes, one did catalyst it and drive it to a point, but you wouldn't have got that if there wasn't a consensus amongst other councillors to agree. And I have to say, I had discussions prior to council with the cabinet member to find a form of words that we could both agree on, though we weren't agreeing on much else, but we were agreeing on the form of words that would probably form the amendment. So I think it's a good day for the parishes. Devil's in the detail, but it's going to be better than what we've got presently. So that's got to be a good thing.
Thank you very much, Robin. And we are indebted to you for bringing that up in Buckinghamshire Council. And I noticed through the various committees that you did it the softly way for a change, and it's worked, isn't it?
Well, I don't know that I'm always that softly and very cuddly, but I did get through the system. Yeah. But I think other people played their part in the discussions, else we wouldn't have got where we are.
That made Howard grin. Paul, have you got anything to add to that? It was going to be your report. No, nothing. Thank you. Anything else? Any questions on that one? Anything else on the action list? Anyone wants to raise? Councillor Harvey, John.
Yeah, obviously there's still the action. Just everyone should have had a copy. I have had a partial response from Buckinghamshire Council to my inquiries around the Strategic Sites Committee of North Bucks. I've also put in some other queries as well, but there is still one outstanding that is still now well past its deadline, and this is the matter concerning my FOI about the notes that were given out by the planning officer before the meeting actually started.
Yeah, excuse me interrupting. That's actually on agenda 5.3. So we'll come back to that in a moment, John, if we can. Thank you.
Oh. It says to receive action reports as per the attached list.
Yeah, but then.
Oh, I see. Oh, right.
Do you report on?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
If members are happy, as you started, can we bring that forward? Is everyone happy? Thank you. Yeah, please continue, John.
I didn't know I had a special item on the agenda. Apologies for that. Anyway, so I am still waiting on the full reply. But I've got it. Let's double check, because I asked Paul, you have circulated to everybody, haven't you? Town clerk?
I'm not sure that I have.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Okay.
waiting. I'm waiting for councillor to. I'm sorry.
Okay, but I am still waiting on the full response. It seems as if the question around the notes that were given to the councillors before the meeting has not been answered. They are still somehow thinking about whether to give us or give me / us a copy of that. I don't know what the complication should be, because sure, that document must exist. I don't think there should be any personal information in there that would need to be redacted. So we await to see what happens. And as I say, I'll give it another couple of weeks. Actually, probably only a few more days. And then I will write back again and say, okay, so what's happening? And am I now to involve the ICO? I'm sorry, but whatever's happening around this application to build these 150 houses in Maids Morden is beginning to smell just a little.
Thank you very much, John. Councillor Touchbury?
Hang in there, John, because I ended up having to do a freedom of information request as a councillor on the Shire Council to get the contract for the waste disposal contract in High Wycombe and the Chiltern, because I felt I ought to know what it was, and I had to carry on for several months with that. So hang on in there, John. In the end, they will produce the information, and somebody will wake up to it. When I got it, it was immensely redacted, let's say. It was a bit like reading blank sheets of paper, but you will get it. If you don't get it, you will have to go to the information committee, but give them a bit more time. It could be that there's some personal issues around there and some legal prejudices from the council's point of view why you haven't got it. If that's the case, they should say that, because it's all part of it. But I mean, they do get in the end. You have to keep soldiering on, and they do in the end give it. If you don't get it, I'll put a freedom of information request in, and I'll follow it up with a question in some other form, because it's important we know this information, because how can you judge the actions of others if you don't know what they made them actions based upon? So keep going with it, John. Keep going, Bob.
Thank you for that, John.
Yeah, just to respond, I mean, just to read out exactly, in the email I received 5 days ago, which is still well past the deadline date, the response was, regarding your further request for information on the pre-meeting of the Strategic Sites Committee, I can confirm that this is currently being considered, and we will issue a response shortly.
Thank you.
So that's what they're saying. But that request was put in now more than 40 days ago. So we're talking of a significant delay here in terms of when they should have responded by then. We're now into the 3rd month, and that should not be happening. The other questions I've put in would seem that the decision that was done in South Bucks on a similar planning matter was processed in an entirely different way, which means that there's a high degree of inconsistency that suggests that the Maids Morton decision I put to the Strategic Sites Committee was a curious and strange one, and was very different to what happened to South Bucks on a similar decision several months previous.
Right. Thank you very much for that, John. So we'll just have to watch that space. Item 5.2, HGV routes. Councillor Paul Harrans is going to be presenting his EW Rail update on item 11. So with members' agreement, we'll save the routes until then. Everyone happy? Thank you. Brings us on to planning applications. Item 6, we've got 4 applications tonight. The first is 25 London Road, to demolish an outhouse and shed and erect a 2-storey single-storey rear extension. Catherine outlined all the reasoning behind that. It was at one time used as a university student residence from 1985 to 1988, but it's now a private house. It's got 3 bedrooms at the moment. The extension will not increase the number of bedrooms. It's just going to make the living space larger. Anyone like to speak on this? Councillor Harrans, you were first.
Yes, I'd just like to say I see no reason why we couldn't, I have no objections, and I think there's no reason to object to this.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Hirons. I can't see any reason to object because the garden is extraordinarily long by the looks of it on the map, and it's not going to affect the street scene from the front. I don't see a problem with it.
Thank you. Councillor Touchbury?
Just to say, I can't comment on it, only to say I'm very envious of the garden. You know, that looks a remarkably lovely garden, and it's actually doing a good job of soaking up a lot of rainwater. So long may that garden remain. But I won't comment on the application.
So is everyone happy with that? Carolyn, any view from the Buckingham Society?
The Buckingham Society adopts exactly the same view. It's not a problem, and we certainly noted the long garden.
Thank you. So that's fine then. Everyone's happy with that. Thank you very much. The next item, item 2, which we combine with item 3, is removal of existing signage and replacement business signage at Michael Graham Estate Agents, 45 Bridge Street. This has been a long-running pain in the side. It's twice been refused. Enforcement haven't, until now, been really pushing. They've now finally got Michael Graham to agree to change the aluminium frontage for a wooden frontage. And again, Catherine's made very comprehensive notes about the history of that. Anyone like to speak? Carolyn.
Thank you. Yes, I think first of all, one should say that enforcement has really got the bit between their teeth on this one. So well done them. Secondly, the signage as proposed is much better, but we do not like the lighting, and we cannot for the life of us see why such intrusive lighting is necessary. So we would object to that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, I'd agree with the Buckingham Society on that. You know, the insides will be well and truly lit, I'm sure. It's an estate agent. Why wouldn't they like the actual, you know, the properties and so on? I see no reason for the actual name to be lit up in any kind of way. There's ample street lighting around that area.
Thank you. I have a view as well. The Heritage Officer noted that the old-fashioned shop windows, which have a nice arch at the top of them, have been obscured by the sign. This replacement isn't actually that much smaller, and to my mind, they are still obscuring the top of the shop windows. So why can that green board with Michael Graham be narrow? Why does it have to be so wide?
I thought they were actually revealing the top of the windows from what I was reading in the report. That they actually had the drawing might be a bit misleading.
Can we throw this to Catherine?
Yes, the drawings aren't actually dimensioned, and it looks very much as though they used the same base drawing for existing and proposed, and didn't make the adjustment with the measurements. I agree that what you see is not what you should be seeing. I think we ought to say something about obscuring those arched tops. I mean, the whole point of having the new sign is to expose them, and the illustrations as submitted do not show that.
Yeah, and it's something specifically that the Heritage Officer picked on as well. So
it may just be that they were lazy about the drawings and not producing a new one. They simply used the same base drawing as a, but that's laziness, and we need to know because it is a listed building.
thank you. So what do members wish to do? To oppose it, or to make no comment but draw to the attention our concerns about the obtrusive lighting and the hidden arch top of the window arches?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can say that we oppose, but would be minded to change if they it was redrawn and shown clearly that they would be exposed.
Yeah.
Is everyone happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I shall abstain, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Right, we move on to item 4, which is land at Manor Farm, east of Buckingham. This is for a solar panel estate with 38,000 photovoltaic cells, and this site actually covers 58 acres. It's alongside the A421. The concern we had when we first considered a pre-application presentation was that it's overlooking a fairly substantial historic, medieval and Roman site. And Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan Development Policy 1012, while promoting small-scale renewable energy regeneration, only permits it where it preserves or enhances heritage sites. It may well be that members would feel that that might be a fair trade-off to commit ourselves to part of our commitment to fighting climate change. Councillor Ralph, I think you'd like to speak on this.
Yes, indeed. I think, as I've mentioned before, it's a question of balance between differing elements in our council view. On the one hand, part of Buckingham's charm and so on is the history of it, including all the way back to Roman times and so on, and should be protected, and rightly so. Equally, we have a climate emergency in hand, and one of those is for clean green energy. And of course, in some ways, these two clash at this point. So it is a balance. I've thought about this a little bit more, and I regret that the developer didn't come and fulfill his request to talk to us before this, because I think some of this could have been discussed, and some objections and certainly some worries could have been cleared up. So I think that was a missed opportunity. But on balance, I think providing the correct things are done in terms of archaeological surveys and digs and so on, I would be in favour of this personally, because I see it's for the future. It's not going to last forever. I think it's 40 years is the maximum. And consequently, having a nice big energy supply like this right on our doorstep gives us a very positive picture of Buckingham as it is today.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury?
Just Councillor Anthony Ralph raised the thing that I wanted to point out that I understand, though I won't comment on it per se, is that it's only 40 years. And of course, that's 40 years that the land will be available after 40 years. So it's not a permanent development, really. It's a transient development. So I understand the life of it is 40 years. If I'm not right, please advise me I'm not right. But I think Anthony's right in what he said about 40 years. But I won't comment on the application per se, because I expect it will appear somewhere else.
Thank you. Councillor Howlands?
Yes, I think it's very. I'd be very surprised if this lasts 40 years. I suspect that the technology will move on, and it'll be replaced long before that. I mean, even nuclear power stations only last for about 40 years, and they're using thousands of tons of concrete. These are just some little posts stuck in the ground to hold them up. So I see no reason why we shouldn't support our commitment on climate change by agreeing this.
Thank you. Carolyn, does Buckingham Society have a view on this?
Yes, and we are broadly very supportive of the scheme for all the reasons that Councillor Ralph has outlined. The only comments we made were we should ensure that the drainage element to the scheme is fully worked out, and we would quite like to see some slightly increased buffers on the south and east boundaries. Although I'm bound to say that the tumuli and the site of the Roman villa are on the other side of the valley, as it were. So they're not actually going to be visible from that site, and I don't think would impinge on it in any way. And the archaeological digs that are allowed should allay fears as to anything that might be damaged permanently. And I agree, having had some truck with solar farms, they say 40 years, but it's more likely to be 30.
Thank you. Anyone else have a view? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, my view is in common with others. I think we should support this. But I think with the caveats around the footpaths and obviously the need for archaeological excavations and everything else. But broadly speaking, we need more solar energy. So yeah, it's a good thing.
Thank you. Catherine has pointed out in her notes that the footpath we were concerned about has in fact been reinstated on the plans, although I think you do note there's no confirmation of the 5-metre corridor that writes.
No, I'm perfectly certain the footpaths officer will see to that for himself.
Yeah, thank you very much. And also Buckinghamshire Archaeology have put some conditions on that no development shall take place until there's been trial trenches dug and searches for significant archaeological remains. As Carolyn said, it's not just Thornborough Bridge. There's a Roman villa down at the Twins. There's the Roman temple at Bourton Grounds. And of course, on the hill opposite, just above the tumuli, is the medieval deserted village, which was Thornborough. And it's widely believed it became a plague village. And Thornborough then moved down the valley on the other side where it was closer to water. But so all those things are the heritage assets. But the general feeling, as you say, is that those are outweighed by the need for a solar farm of this size. Councillor Stutchbury?
It will be nice to see the report, Chairman, because we're starting to build up with what's going on. One of the pluses of things which happened is we're starting to build up a bit more picture about what Buckingham was like and where it was and the incident. Of course, we know now in the Brackley Road Cemetery, there wasn't 40 bodies, there was 90 bodies. So, and they're still going away to be examined. So we're starting to build up some knowledge about our forefathers and whatever's discovered there. I hope we'll share that report with the committee, because I'm a bit of a fan of Baldrick, and I like all this digging in the ground business, and I do like to find out what's happened before, because I see some affinity with it.
Thank you. So nobody's objecting to this then, so we can take it that everyone's in favour. That's unanimous. Yes. Thank you very much. Obviously, Councillor Stutchbury abstaining, as he said. Thank you. Finally, not for consultation, but we got it anyway. 15 Market Square. What is Panache, or was Panache Hairdressers? Application for a lawful development certificate for the proposed use of ground floor and first floor as medical consulting rooms. And I think, Catherine, you said this is just a matter of report to us.
So you know what, I mean, if people see building work going on, the first thing they do is ring me and say, have they got permission? So.
Thank you. Everyone happy with that? If we can move on to planning decisions, although Item 7 says no planning decisions have been notified since the last agenda. Catherine has this afternoon dropped in a note about what is going on. Would you like to enlarge on that, Catherine?
Well, yes, I mean, I don't think I've ever had an agenda with no decisions on it whatever. I know it's only a fortnight since the last meeting, so I had a look back, and the last 5, 3 of them were tree decisions, which are always quick anyway, and 2 of them were hardly worth bothering with. One was the signage up at the industrial place who changed hands, and the dropped curb in Bradwell Close. So we've gone since early December without a decision on any solid planning application whatsoever, and it worries me.
So what's the outstanding total at the moment of applications?
Well, 1 did actually come in today, another tree decision, and so we're down to 49.
All right.
That's not counting tonight's and next meetings, which I've already got 3 for. So.
Councillor Hirons, you were first, then Councillor Stutchbury.
Yes, can I suggest that we actually write to, well, I guess it's probably Councillor White, but I'd be guided on that, and say how concerned we are that this means that the backlog we've got is getting bigger and bigger, which makes it more and less likely that it'll have there'll be properly considered decisions. And of course, there's people who are waiting to do developments, which they in theory can't do. So really, they're slowing the whole thing down, and we need to chivvy them along. And if they don't, I guess we'll have to go to the highest level of there, and if necessary, to our MP or something, to say, you know, they're really not doing the job.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Well, it is curious because we've only met on frequent occasions, the North Bucks Planning and Village Planning Committee, and we've managed on the first occasion not to determine an application because of inconsistencies. We met again and determined an application, and only at the last meeting we've got to re-defer this decision for officers to come back again. So even when we're determining applications, it's on public record, you can watch the webcams of the meetings, it appears that we're not getting through an application in a meeting because the paperwork isn't matching. In the last meeting, it was because it said in the planning application, there's no legal need to recognise the local plan. Councillor Lumunga pointed out there was. The officer said there wasn't, and by the end of the meeting, it was decided that there was. So that one had to go away. So I think there's a problem there. The other thing is, I am really, really concerned because you think of the major applications that you have had called to committee. Mays Morton Road 3, Osier Way, we could go on. They're the 2 big ones. I don't know where they stand as a council, but they have not been determined. And we don't really want applications determined by non-determination, do we? Because non-determination means that even if we're against an application, the officers don't have such time to negotiate the Section 106 agreements and get anything out of the application which mitigates the cost of them on the, not only saying financially, the cost of them on the environs and the public. This is a really, really major problem. This is now sort of 12 months getting soon into the new council come May. And these applications have got history behind them. We do need to establish what the facts. If there's a systemic problem there, it needs to be addressed. How we approach that without antagonising people. It's not about antagonising people. It's about seeing process undertaken. Now, there must be a procedural that the cabinet member may be the person to contact, but it might be well worth, from our point of view, writing to Councillor Patrick Feely, who will have had discussions with officers. He will have had reasons why stuff hasn't come to committee, because he will have to, because of his responsibility as the chairman of the committee. the other thing that we have to be wondering, they're not determining them under the new legislation, where a huge amount of applications can be determined per se under the delegated powers of the officers, which they can do. So it appears that neither that's happening nor going to committee. So it's a double problem, and it can only get worse. And my real worry is, as I said earlier, is that it will mean that Buckingham's area planning will be done by appeal. And we know that is not a good way to go. Whatever we think about an application, it's always better if professionals look at it in advance.
Thank you very much. Anything else on that? No, thank you very much for putting that together, Catherine. Item 8, Buckinghamshire Council members to receive news of Buckinghamshire Council new documents, other information from council members present. Councillor Stutchbury, you being the only Shire councillor here, the floor is yours.
Well, just to say, sadly, you will be aware at the weekend of what happened in Buckingham. You will be aware that our residents in Candleford Court, there was carbon monoxide got into the building. Now, I attended the site on the day, and I spoke to the fire officer concerned as a member of the fire authority, and he gave me a quick briefing. I did correspond with the cabinet member, Isabella, and she responded greatly. Now, what happened then, I am reassured, is Buckinghamshire Council sent out teams of officers to make sure that if there's anyone needed housing, they would have been housed. They also sent other officers down there just to make sure the residents weren't, because what we didn't know is whether they'd be able to go back into the actual accommodation. What was present, and I understand today the full of what happened, is it was the ground floor which was affected by the carbon monoxide. The carbon monoxide didn't go up to the second floor. That was assessed by the fire authority when they went in there. What we do need to be minded of the fact, I'm advised that the council was now, with conversations between all parties, referred this to health and safety. My understanding in law is the company have 10 days, it's either 10 working days or 10 days to give an interim report about what took place. That's a legal nicety. That will come back to the correct parties and other people will feed into that. If that isn't so, there's another course of action which will take place thereafter. But what I am going to say is I was really assured by the way our emergency services dealt with that. There's an and the way they professionally dealt with it. What is difficult to explain to people is why one floor was affected and another floor wasn't affected. That's to do with the design of the building. I've asked questions about, I was advised that by residents that the venting system downstairs wasn't working. The system actually vents the gases and anything out of the car park. There was works going on in there clearly to do with the drying out of the car park, and also, which has got to be checked out and has been added to the list. I was advised there's a general fire alarm in the building, but carbon monoxide detectors are not something that the owners of the building, Guinness, are responsible for. They're something that owners are. So a tenant notified the fire authority once their carbon monoxide detector went off, and they went off. But I'm really worried that personally that a large community of people in there, and it's only through talking to residents how I found out how many disabled and different people there are in there on the ground floor, because that's where they live. So I know what members want to ask me, but I would like the council to at least express a view about this, because we're the community council. This is our community, and they've been badly affected.
What I could add is that Councillor Warren White has this afternoon posted that he has asked Guinness Trust and Buckinghamshire Council for a full report and for details of the planning conditions that were attached to this in 2007. I had a look this afternoon. I couldn't see anything specifically about evacuation plans for fire or gas, but it did say in the flood information that the Developments Management Committee will be responsible for flood risk management and after flood cleanup operations. Due to the site's commercial element, it's anticipated the management company will employ full-time site security whose job will be to include flood warning duties. Well, obviously the commercial side never happened, so presumably there are not full-time security staff there to warn residents, but it's very worrying indeed. And of course, we did ask with the Crown Care Home, Old People's Home down at Cornwall's Meadow, we asked for there to be a flood evacuation plan, but that was ignored. So we don't want history repeating itself.
Well, thank you for that, Chairman. What Councillor White said confirmed what I'm glad there's two of us going at this. That confirms what conversations I've had today. I received an email only tonight on it, with some of that detail, but there are elements to do with this, isn't there, that just keep ticking away, isn't there? The flooding of the building, which has always been an issue, the concern that this is a reoccurring problem, and the fact that there seem to have been, till proved to the contrary, no natural evacuation plan. Now, I understand there's confusion, as I said earlier, between the areas which were affected. What I can say, when the fire officer attending it said to me that it's, you know, he took the actions appropriate, the ground floor was there, the ambulance service were there, and the police were obviously keeping order on the outside. But these were vulnerable people. They spent several hours outside in the cold and the rain until they could actually go back into the building. And Guinness owned the building. What we can't say is who done the work for legal reasons, but their subcontractor clearly, obviously, by the actions that took place, didn't act appropriately. I think that's a reasonable thing to say. Through you, Chairman, what do you think on a town council level we should do? Because what we can't do is ignore this.
I don't know. What do members think? Should the town council have a say in this, or should we leave it to our Shire members?
Surely it should be shouldn't it be the full council? We, after all, are the planning committee. We're not really the environment committee or town centre committee. And I wouldn't have said that in our terms of reference there was anything about dealing with emergency situations from occupied premises. So I think we should do something, but I don't agree that it's this committee's job.
Well, I think, Councillor Hirons, you would probably explain to the chairman that he explained to you quite evidently that there are planning concerns in this which were raised, and there's inconsistency in this. The chairman, when he attended about the evacuation plan, was something that he wanted to be put into the home in Cornwall's Meadow car park. There are planning issues in this, and as the chairman quite rightly said, and Councillor White obviously informed the chairman today, there are issues to do with planning. As otherwise, why would the cabinet member for planning be taking an interest in it? Period. So whether the council comments on it or not, but we are the community council. I should think we should at least write to the principal parties in this, expressing our deep concern, and ask for, when the reports are conducted, that we receive a full update and information which we can then determine. If we don't get that information, we'll be falling down our job. No good waiting to full council, because these things have a lifespan, and interest will move to the next disaster or tragedy. So if no one's considered, I would propose that we write to the principal parties asking for information to be shared after the investigation has been completed, to know exactly what took place, so that when we determine other planning applications in the future, we can use that information to ensure that it's given into a planning document.
I hear what Councillor Haran said, and my own feeling is that if there are conditions attached to planning applications which we've been involved in, we should be monitoring those conditions. And just reminding people, as we said, Councillor White is at the moment investigating us. But first of all, Councillor Mordew, I'm sorry, when I said to Councillor Stutchby is the only Shire Councillor present, you'd actually fallen off my screen at that moment. My apologies. You are here.
Right, I'll probably put out your world as well, but don't worry. Carbon monoxide, some people think it's heavier than air, but it's not. They confuse that with carbon dioxide. Carbon monoxide can be float around, and it requires adequate ventilation. However, there must be an environmental health investigation into it, because it is a serious situation, obviously. And I think it is a matter for full council. May I suggest to get in touch with environmental health and to pursue what's going on. It's not uncommon, but it's highly lethal, because what happens is with carbon monoxide, you're inclined to become drowsy.
Yes.
And that is the big danger. You drift off. I have seen the effects of carbon monoxide poisoning from a coke boiler, and it killed a dog because the dog was sleeping next to it to get heat. So it's something that I think the Buckingham Town Council should pursue to make sure there's adequate reply from the environmental health and the authorities, because there will be a formal investigation from health and safety as well.
Thank
and
you.
The public should be kept updated what the situation is and what we done to prevent this from happening again.
Thank you. Councillor Ruff?
Yeah, just I take Councillor Haran's point and everything else. I wonder if this committee could thank Councillor Stutchby for an early reporting, particularly of potential planning matters that it applies to, and that it would be the recommendation of this committee to forward this information. I know they know, but forward it formally to the full council, and to suggest that they in turn keep appraised of all the reporting that's obviously going to go on. In other words, just to satisfy everybody that there's a comfortable communication route through this.
Yeah, would everyone be happy with that? That's Councillor Stutchby.
I'm quite happy to do that. What I will do, if I receive information which is not of a legalistic and confidential nature, what I can share, I'll share it with the town clerk to enable him to put together something period for council anyway, because we aren't here, but we are this evening the only people who can speak, and procedures and standing orders are one thing, but people's lives are another. And I note what Councillor Mordew said, that the tragedy of a dog. I was pointed out to me by one of the residents, what would have happened if the alarms hadn't gone off or something hadn't happened? I hadn't got an answer. But I think we are going to be discussing this again. By that time, to settle Councillor Haran's point of view and taking Councillor Anthony Ralph's point of view, we may have more information to inform the debate about where we go forward, because we've got to go forward and we've got to ensure that those residents are protected in the future. I think that, judging by my correspondence, that everyone's going to do that, and we do need to do it. But it's not something I want to see in Buckingham on a regular occasion, frankly.
Thank you. Councillor Mordew?
I just want to say I'll be cautious about putting too much information out at the moment, because it could be a criminal investigation that's being pursued. So I'd be very, you wouldn't want to prejudice any court case.
Yeah,
I know that, Howard. I know
Yeah.
that. That's why I said what I could share. I'm well aware of those niceties, but thank you for pointing it out to me. You're quite right.
I was going to make the
Robin, I'm not pointing out to you, I'm pointing out to the whole committee.
I was going to make the same point as chairman, that we should not prejudge this issue until we know all the facts. Is everyone happy then with what Councillor Ralph suggested, that we let the full council know what our concerns and let that be dealt with by the town clerk and the full council? Thank you. Councillor Stutchley, anything else you want to say?
No, thank you. Just
thank
I will give the town clerk, the officer, the details to do his own questions as well, confidentially, so that he can ask the questions for your behalf, so that we get the information to you. It's all very well me having it, but I am not the town council.
Howard, anything you wish to say under that information from councillors? You're muted.
Sorry, it's difficult to get off mute. To the planning committee in general, you mean? Or I'll just say the question of parish involvement in planning has been discussed by the working group on the constitution, and parish views have been taken into account, and I believe a paper will go to standards and eventually to council for its decision.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that information.
Can I thank Councillor Morgie for his time he's put into that, because he has put time into it.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think sure everyone agrees with that. Thank you. So item 8.2, to discuss applications to be called in. Well, I don't think we have any, have we? Apart from the Michael Graham, we're not going to call that in. We're just going to say we've been minded to approve it. Yep. So we don't actually need to deal with that today. Item 8.3, an updated list of undecided those and attend call-ins attached for information. Thank you for that, Catherine. Anyone, any comment? That's just really a matter for report. And we move on to item 9 then, Buckinghamshire Council committee meetings. There's a North Bucks Area Planning Committee held on January 13th. There were no Buckingham applications. The following day was strategic sites, and again, that was cancelled anyway. Agendas for February meetings not yet available. Item 10, consultations. Appendix G on your agenda pack. This is supporting housing delivery and public service infrastructure, which was published in December. This is, we asked members to send their answers to Catherine. She's collated them and taken the best. Catherine, anything to comment on this?
No, that's just for information, what I filed, so.
This is due to be, this was filed obviously by January 28th, wasn't it?
Oh, yes.
As was agreed. So that's just really a matter for report, but what the general feeling of the committee is in that document. So that's quite a useful document to hold on to. Item 10.2, the right to regenerate, receive information on new government consultation and decide whether we as a town council want to participate. That's Appendix H. That's about regenerating long-standing vacant, derelict or underutilised public sector land. Councillor Harrens.
Well, it just seems to me that even though in theory it's a good idea, but I don't see it having any relevance to this parish. And so therefore I do not think we need to put in a response.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
We don't know what the future's going to be, do we? We can't judge what might want regenerating and not regenerating. We've got we don't know what the economics going to look like as COVID winds out. We don't know what's going to be lots of things at the moment. to say we might not have any part to play in it's a bit early to judge. But I think we should say that we're interested in it and we would like to be informed and take up something at a later stage. At the moment, there's not an obvious. I respect Councillor Hiram's point, but we don't know what the future is. And to cut ourselves out of it, if there's any money which available to regenerate Buckingham in any way, shape or form, we need to be putting a stamp on it if we can. What it is, I don't know at this moment in time, but I do think maybe we should just express an interest in it if period to be stay informed.
Thank you. Councillor Hirons again.
Yeah, well, of course, it just refers to purchasing unused government assets. Well, I don't think we've got any government assets really in this parish or even round here. You know, I don't know we've got any abandoned airfields that we might want to buy or something like that. You know, so that's why I don't think it really applies to us. You know, we're talking about the right to buy government assets which aren't being used, really land. I mean, I think it really is just land, isn't it?
Yeah, well, what is before us is a consultation with a closing date of March the 13th. So if members decide that we don't need to respond to it, then we could just pass over. What's the general feeling? As Councillor Hirons says? Okay, all happy with that? Thank you. Let's move on then to next item 11, HS2 East-West Rail presentation. Councillor Hirons, you attended those meetings on our behalf.
Right, well, you've seen in this agenda pack fairly earlier on, what we're talking about in this, it's sort of really what, you know, a grass growing sort of exercise, because what it's all about is the building or transporting materials to the site of the two new railway lines, and in fact the building the new depot north of where is it, down it's just west of Steeple Claydon. What the meeting generally talks about is, first of all, when different roads are closed, different bridges are closed, and some places have absolute, you know, it can be absolute disaster for them, but none of them have can really concerned here. The one which someone, I think Catherine, sent round earlier this week is the one which is likely to affect people here when they start doing the bridges at Finmere on the A421. Because that's going to be a pretty major one, and you don't have to go a long way round it to miss it. But if you look at those two bridges, I'm glad they're taking them down anyway, regardless of building new railways, because you can see them rusting through. And that's going to be quite interesting when a girder, you know, about 2 feet wide falls down because it's rusted through. So that's really what the other big issue all the time is, dirty roads. And they have got to the point now where most of the depots have got some sort of wheel cleaning, which makes a difference. But that's about all. And those are all, you know, it's around the Steeple Claydon area, just west of Steeple Claydon, where it's really bad. And where there, of course, there's going to be the depot building, which they haven't really started talking about yet. As a side level, when you see things like our MP saying that he wants to stop all this, I'd be very, very against stopping it now, because down there, in a lot of places down there, it's just totally ravaged at the moment. You know, there's so many roads shut, dug up, everything being pulled, the verges smashed to hell. And the only way of getting through this really is for the railway line to build and get everybody off it again. If they left it now, you know, it would be, if you ever go down there in your car, well, it's better if you got forward before, really. It's in appalling state. and the only way is to get through the other side of this. And as you see from that, what they're trying to do is use a rail go along the rail track so they can carry goods there rather than on the roads. But most of the roads are just totally unsuitable for this sort of work. But if we're going to build this, that's the way it is. Any questions?
Councillor Thatchbury?
I attend those meetings when I'm available, and I must say, what Paul's description of it is pretty accurate about the conflict zone, the war zone presently, the Somme, the Battle of the Somme is taking place, or Mons or whatever is taking place in the Claydons. Funny enough, it's clay material down there, so it's never going to drain. What we have to be concerned about is, Paul, would you agree, is the creep of this development and the infrastructure crumbling as it comes back towards Buckingham, and also the Finmere Bridge taken down, which has looked rusty for a lifetime. That's going to change the traffic movements to Buckingham. Sat-navs, I think, sends everyone up to the Barleymow, up the A421 up that way. But if you're going to Bicester, this is going to be quite different, because people will then be coming out of Buckingham, going up the Gorcut Road once they find it, cutting across through Chetwood and that, and finding the Rat Run, which they did years ago. So it's going to change the way people move around it. And also, none of these roads have got much substructure under them, and all our roads, we all know, have been wanting TLC for about the best part of 50 years. The last time any major road was done in North Buckingham was the concrete road down to the Seven Stars to transport ammunition for the war effort. And that's why it's a concrete road. So I do think we need to keep monitoring this, because I'm worried that the traffic movements will change. The MP said at the meeting that he wanted a sheriff to oversee these things. I said to him I had a buy-in on that, being as I've got the name Robin, and Sheriff of Nottingham seemed quite appropriate. But I do think that this idea that you can stop something part way through, it never should have been done in the first place. Stopping it part way through, I think Paul makes a good case about the mess what will be left behind. They've already ripped up all the environment and the trees. What are we going to be left with? I'm not in favour of it, period, but I do think that we do need to monitor it, because it will probably start affecting our economy, movements around Buckingham, the way people interact with our town centre, and we could find indirectly that we're cut off economically at different points from people from the Claydons accessing the markets, accessing Buckingham, the way people engage with the hospital, and it will limit our travel from Buckingham. The way you get to Aylesbury, we won't have two ways to get to Aylesbury. We'll only have one, really. And so it's the transport spill off from this, which is going to be great. When people aren't in lockdown and start using the roads again, when people are no longer working at home and have to return to the workplace, I think we're going to see a lot more traffic, and our roads just won't take it.
Thank you. If I could ask you, Paul, the two maps that we've been given for the Brackley and the Mixbury routes, are those accurate, that none of the HGV traffic or in fact any of the rail traffic will come past the Radcliffe roundabout coming towards Buckingham?
They should only come by those. They are being and don't forget, what you've got there is a bit misleading, because it just refers to HS2. Don't forget, at the same time, you've got East-West Rail being done by someone different.
Yeah.
In fact, by doing, well, it was the old British Railway Board are doing that. And of course, when you get down, the two come together, and it can be that. And then there's this one called EKFB who they mentioned there, who've got themselves the major contract for building the new maintenance depot. And that's a big thing as well. So that's one of my worries about this, what they said. It was really just East-West Rail. And in some places, it's HS2. In some places, East-West Rail is causing more havoc than HS2. Admittedly, it isn't a fresh build in quite the same. Well, of course, HS2, a lot of it here isn't fresh build. It's just along the old Great Central Railway track, which, unlike some of you youngsters, I do remember.
I like being called a youngster, Paul. Keep it going.
There you are, you see.
Anyone else any questions for Councillor Hirons?
Can I just say to Paul that thank him for attending these things, because they are not the most glamorous of meetings, and most of them are really dealing with detailed,
very detailed
concerns to do with personal little patches on it. So I think we must admire Paul's stubbornness and determination to sit through them.
Yes.
And I think we should thank him for that. A good many folks would have not been so diligent. So well done, Paul.
But I've got another 2 years or something of it, and at the end of that, you can buy me a drink or something.
You're being re-elected, are you, Paul?
I think, Paul, we might need to get you counselling by then.
Yeah. I've forgotten about it.
I can echo what Robin said. Thank you for that report and for attending on our behalf. Item 12, enforcement, to report any new breaches. Anyone have anything? John, Councillor Harvey.
I didn't quite clock where this was because I was walking with a brisk pace, but something seems to have happened to one of the windows next to where BCS car sales is. And I think that's in the conservation area. So I can't say much more than that, and I do apologise, but that's where it is, next to BCS quality vehicles. A window to up. I don't know if it's been changed or just repaired, but there was a lot of work going on with it the other day.
I did raise this with Catherine, sent photographs. Catherine, you looked into it, I think.
Yes, I'm not entirely sure, because if it's just a question of replacement windows, and some of them were in pretty ropey condition, the Marriott's houses over there between there and the woodwork was in pretty grim condition. And I suspect that having sold a bit of land out the back to the care home people, they've now got the money to put replacement windows in.
Maybe.
Yeah, the building itself is not listed, although the buildings opposite on the other side of the bullring are listed. So, but thank you for that, John. That's
okay.
Anything else? No. If we move on to item 13.
Councillor Stutsbury showing a hand.
Sorry, Robin. My apologies.
Buckinghamshire enforcement is alive, because there's a press release out about them enforcing something in South Buckinghamshire to do with a determination of property. So Buckinghamshire enforcement obviously is alive and is actually taking actions against properties without planning permission. So I think, though it's in South Bucks, we should congratulate them on being alive and actually taking actions. So maybe that southerly wind will blow north and resolve some of the outstanding matters here, as they move up the country like.
Thank you, Robin. So item 13, application to fell trees. No updates to the list since the last meeting. Item 14, Mattis report, any damage, superfluous, redundant signage in the town, access issues or other urgent matter. I'll just remind members that the keep left bollard at the entrance to Wells Street after 1 year has still not been replaced with a permanent one. Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I think this just about might qualify as an urgent matter. I've been a bit disturbed by the articulated lorry that went up Summerhouse Hill and did significant damage to some of the flats at the top end of that development. And I walked around there a day or so later, and also a day later as well, just to kind of check it out. And there was no evidence of any kind of structural support, even though a fairly big chunk of the wall has been taken out. And I wondered whether, I don't know whether, I mean, we don't have any power there, but whether we can ask the developer or whoever it is responsible for the building just what's going on, because I'm concerned that the residents of that building must be suffering a bit. I mean, if you look actually side on to the building, it looks like it's no longer vertical. It's been pushed in. I've got to believe that it's not safe, but I'm not a structural engineer, obviously.
John, could you give the background to members who didn't see the Buckingham What Matters posting on this?
Well, as I understand it, the fire brigade were called out because a lorry, a very large lorry, had managed to, I think supposedly, this is I mean, I have no evidence for this, but it was told that they were following their sat-nav to Birmingham and decided that they would go up Summerhouse Hill, even though, of course, there are ample signs to say that Mawson Road is currently closed. They must have driven past that one and then driven up to Summerhouse Hill, which has a dead end sign at the beginning of it. Nonetheless, they carried on up Summerhouse Hill, turned right at the last sort of end before the woods there, and then got to the top just before the restored summer house itself, and obviously couldn't get around the corner, I'm assuming, and took a large chunk out of the building right in that top corner near the garages on Auburn Crescent. So that's where it is. That's the story as far as I'm aware of it.
Thank you. Would it be sensible if we would ask if a temporary no through road sign could be put there while the road closure is in force?
Yeah. What do you think? If it says road closed, people would kind of know not to drive up there any further, including a big Arctic.
Councillor Stutchbury?
Now, we've all discussed Wales Street and what happens in Wales Street, the lorries going down there, and when it appears we now have a new place where lorries can disappear into a vacuum and somewhere they can't go. I think this needs to be addressed. Now, when that was originally constructed, Tesco's were supposed to take their lorries up behind there, but they don't, and it was supposed to be access for Woolworths. So there is, if I've got the area right, there was some vehicular access up there at some point. Are we suggesting that a sign needs to be put there, no articulated lorries?
HGVs.
Yeah, no HGVs. But should we not be asking Transport for Buckinghamshire based on this, whether they did it? Because it's not like once happens, but you know, if somebody's done it once, looking for Birmingham, they're obviously got an interest in sat-nav. If it sends you through there to get to Birmingham, or maybe they were doing it by map. Either way, we don't want a second place in Buckingham where residents are going to be affected in this way. Better to nip it in the bud straight away, I'd have thought.
It's a private road, it's not adopted.
Okay, so it falls to the owners of the land then.
Well, I think they have put adequate signage up at the beginning. It is definitely signed as a no-through road and a private road. I mean, we can't be held responsible for drivers who just choose to ignore any sign that's put in front of them. There are some diversions for the Morton Road closure.
Okay. So
if he's going to go further than the delivery road and actually into the housing estate, then I'm sorry, he doesn't seem to be possessed of enough marbles to be driving large things.
Thank you, Catherine. So any other damage, superfluous or redundant signage, access or other urgent matters? No, thank you. There are no chairman's items for information. Date of the next meeting is Monday, the 22nd of February, after the interim meeting. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you very much for that tonight. That concludes the formal business of the meeting. I will pass the paperwork on to Paul, Catherine, and to you, Nina, about the various reports to the